We're delighted to be joined by the singer-songwriter Robert O'Connor.
Good morning, Robert.
Good morning.
Who is a local, and he's going to talk to us about his career today and his new single, which got its very first airplay on Phoenix FM last week. Robert, you're very welcome to the studio.
Thanks a million. It's become a bit of a tradition for me to come in here on release day. I did it with the last single back in August, I think it was, and it doesn't feel right now to release something without coming in here.
And you released the song last night at 12 o'clock.
Last night, 12 o'clock, yeah, and it's worldwide, even though I had a bit of a stumbling block getting there. I had to get the song licensed because it's the first time I've done a cover, and I didn't realise to release in the US you have to actually get a licence. So a few days ago, this kind of came up, and I'd already kind of pressed the distributor and all that kind of thing, so we had to backpedal a little bit, get our licence and go again. So it's all out there now, though, thank God.
What's the mechanics of getting a licence?
You go to, there's an agency in the US called the Harry Fox Agency. There's a couple of different agencies out there that look after, and some of them charge more than others. Okay. I went obviously with the cheapest one, being an independent artist. And you basically have to apply for the licence. And if you've sampled a track but changed it dramatically, there could be issues that you'd run into. But if you've done a straightforward cover where you haven't changed the lyrics or anything like that, usually it's fine, as long as the artist publisher doesn't, put in any sort of denials or issues with your version. So it's not that the artists themselves would hear it. It would be, I suppose, their publisher, whoever published the track for them originally. So you would have to go to that publisher in that particular country. So in my case, that was the US. But we got it through. It took like 48 hours tops to get it done.
That's pretty impressive.
It was good.
That's quick.
I was I went into a bit of a panic mode for a while, but once it was done, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah. And tell us the song and why you picked that song.
The song is called River, and it's by Joni Mitchell. It was released in 1971.
And we're going to finish the interview later on with that song, so the listeners will get to hear it.
It's almost suitable to play it now. It is a Christmas song, but the decorations are up. Everything's we're in that mode now. So this was all about timing this release. Yeah. And actually, a couple of years ago, I thought about doing this song, but I wasn't on the music scene at the time, and I didn't want to just fire out a random cover. At the time, and I wasn't working with producers. I just wasn't on the scene, full stop. So this year, having come back and done 2 original singles and just been out there promoting relentlessly this year, here and abroad as well, I felt like finally, right, this is the moment to bring out this song. And I hadn't got it recorded, so then it was a case of we were in it was November, and the producer I'd been working with books up pretty quickly. He works with Hosier, he works with a couple of other artists as well. And so for me, I didn't want to work with anybody else because I suppose he understands what I'm going for sonically now. And so I called him up and I said, do you want to do this? And it was a case of him trying to find the time. So we found 2 days, 2 weeks ago, Thursday and Friday. So literally 2 weeks pre-release, we recorded it. We had a day of production, a day of vocals, and then he just mixed through the nights, and literally up until last Wednesday when you guys got it in here, we were mastering literally about an hour before it was sent into you.
Wow.
Hot off the press, hot out of the mixing desk.
Well, you get that as a musician, Daniel, don't you? You understand all that.
I can understand it to a degree, but I mean that's still very quick, and that's boom, 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 boom. Really,
and that's why I work where I work now. It's a producer called Stuart Gray in a Jellistown Studios in near Ashburn. And basically it's completely remote, which is the first nice thing about it, because I've worked in city centre studios before where it's just kind of carnage. There's people coming and going constantly. You literally go into a studio out there in the middle of nowhere and there's no one bothering you, and you're there for a couple of days and that's it. There's no business happening out there. It's just music.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Can I just add, in terms of that, because we had a talk before coming on about the marketing and this whole side. How do you get into a frame of mind before? Do you have a ritual?
I think for me, it's been a little bit easier because I spent the last 4 years or more working in social media. So my qualification is journalism, but
I'll tell you, maybe a question that we'll come to that. I'm just saying, so you're going out to Ashbourne to record a song, record an album, record me. How do you get into that frame of mind?
It can be really difficult. It can be really difficult to shift back into the creative state of mind after being in the business state of mind. And that's something that I really struggled with coming back to music this year. I decided last maybe September that I was going to do this for this whole year. And it was going to be just kind of a hobby / a tester year kind of thing. Because the job that I was with had wrapped up anyway. So it was like, right, what now? But switching over, I think it's really difficult to get back into your kind of subconscious, particularly for songwriting. I think for recording it's one thing, And each single that I've done this year has got a little bit easier because I've learned to just kind of switch off the constant, because when it does come to marketing and things like that, it is very much a constant thing. You know, with social media and all that, it doesn't, you know, there is no closing time.
And Robert, because even now, this for me, I'm here, first stage, writing the song. That's creative, getting into that creative frame of mind. Right. That's one. The second, then the song is written. Then the next one is actually recording it, a different state. A different state
again, because it becomes quite calculated during recording, because even though you might like to think it's this big emotional affair where you just bang it out, it is extremely calculated for most artists. They're going in, they're doing multiple takes of each line, each verse, you're doing a run through of the whole thing. You don't actually almost know until you get your couple of hours of vocals done which bits of which verse are going to be used or which takes are going to be used. And like, when you start to do that, it feels very calculated, and you kind of question, is this going to sound right? Is it going to sound kind of organic? Is it going to sound like flowing? But it does. It's just everything you hear, whether it's something you see on TV like a video or whether it's music you hear on the radio, it all has been thought about very clearly, you know?
I'll get the stage before that, sitting down to write a song. Maybe you don't sit down, maybe you walk. I'm just intrigued as to how you do that, Daniel, and we'll talk to you as well, Danny, about that. How do you actually get in to write? Do you have a process?
It's so random. And I think the thing is, no one knows where songs come from, and you never know if another one's going to come. That's the way I kind of look at it. And there were a few years where none were coming, because I was working. Like I said, I was writing for a couple of different publications, and it turned into social media, which then was a much more business-like affair. And I felt I'd lost all my creativity, and I had no creative outlet, and I suppose I just went into a completely different mode. But at a certain point, you'd go to gigs of your favourite bands and things like that, and then you'd realise, God, I'm really missing this. I'm really missing having my own outlet for music or for creativity or just something. And you might know something was wrong, but you wouldn't have been able to put your finger on it. And for me this year, even though there's been a lot of sacrifices made otherwise, it's been like a journey back to yourself, in a sense, being able to
like a journey music back to yourself. Yeah. And like, is that getting in touch with your muse? Is it getting in touch with your...
For songwriting, I had a couple of instances last year where, like, I had the initial 2 singles that I put out this year written ages ago. So one of them was nearly 3 years old. One of them was from last year. And now I'm back in the writing process again. It's not as common and kind of dense as it used to be. Like, I used to just write all the time. And I think it would be great to get back to that. But I suppose when you're juggling different things, it's difficult to devote that much time. But for me, it definitely comes when I'm out and about. I don't sit down at home and write a song. A lot of the time as well, I'm inspired by things like other kind of mediums that I'd see, like TV, or, you know, it's not necessarily by other music. Or it could be it could be other music, or it could be a book, or, even just having conversations with friends and things like that. And it's very often a line. I find somebody says something, or I read something or hear something, and it gives me an idea, and then I just go from there. I very often have titles first, and usually lyrics come first. The very occasional time you'll get both at the same time. You don't really know where it's come from, and it just is, and you never alter it. And that was the case with No Second Chances, my second single this year. It just was, and I never really knew kind of where it came from. I think those are the best ones.
So, like, something you're reading, something you hear, something you overhear, something you see.
It's about having your ears open all the time.
Having that, going around in that state of mind, that state of frame, and then if something comes in, that's it.
Right. And I guess that's the same as being a journalist or being a radio host or any of those things. It's like, it's about having your senses open and not being closed off to things.
I agree.
Okay. And in terms of then, so you sit down, a time frame for writing the song? Is it a week, a month, a year?
It could be 10 minutes. It could be 10 minutes. And I think, actually, I watched the Coldplay documentary that was on the other night in the cinema. I think it was a one night only thing. I've been telling everybody to go see it, and it was only out for one night. But Chris Martin said in it that the best songs he's written were in 10 minutes, and he sat down and wrote kind of Yellow and songs like that are now part of kind of...
Oh, this sounds easy, this music writing. This all sounds very easy.
But it takes years to get those 10 minutes, you know.
You know what else, though? It's kind of... If you can write 2 songs in one day. So my very first single, I wrote the same song. I wrote another song in that same sit-down that day. Yeah. And I've never used it. Not as an album track, not as a B-side. It was just so rubbish that it's never been used. And yet, on the other hand, there was my first single. So it's kind of like... it's really hit and miss, and then you can overthink it, and you can, like, I've another musician friend who kind of says to me, oh, you need to go back to that, you need to edit, what about you do that, what about you make that diverse? I just don't like to overthink it that way. If I get to the studio and the producer says, I don't like the sound of that word, well then, yeah, that's fine. Or, if it's for a certain reason musically, but I don't like to deconstruct a song to a point where it's not what it was when you originally wrote it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes like handing something over to an editor and them putting their spin on it,
So like and when you're happy with the song or pretty much there, you then move to the recording studio.
Yeah.
And that you may tweak it a little bit, change a little bit with the producer, talk it through.
But that's the hardest part. That's really, particularly when you've been away from it for 5 years or so, as was the case this year. When I went into the studio in January, we went in for 2 days kind of rehearsals before Christmas, and then in January, 2nd of January, straight in. And it was really difficult to go in and sing these songs that nobody had heard, that I'd kind of been living with for 2 or 3 years. And because it had been such a break as well, I'd been used to being in a business environment, and suddenly I was in a studio again. It was kind of like a different person in a way.
And Robert, like, in terms of going into the studio and singing it, is there a bit of burning your soul at that? Is
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so there's a bit of real vulnerability there.
100%.
You're now putting it out
I was
there.
very nervous, and they knew that when I was going in, which is why I worked with a guy called Steve Hogan, who was the guy who produced my first album, and he came with me, and he was a co-producer. And the whole idea behind that, as well as me liking his work, was to have some familiarity and have kind of somebody who knew where I'd been before and where I wanted to go and things like that, because it felt weird to go in with a stranger or a room of strangers, which is why I didn't work with a big group, and do that and have a room full of people watching you deliver your first line. It's just too much when you've been away for so long. Whatever about if you're in the habit of it, but when you've been on such a break and you're feeling a little bit vulnerable as it is,
You do that, you put it out, you record it then. Is that the same again when it gets played live? Is that same vulnerability there, or have you moved on from that? Or
I think it depends on the song. I think more if it's a very personal song, then it kind of, sometimes you even forget what you've written about, or you forget that moment, and then it comes back to you when you perform it live. And I haven't had too much of that this year, because the focus has been very much on kind of rebuilding a platform for me to do that on.
Robert, I'm saying, so you wrote the song, comes in here to Phoenix FM, and it does go sort of places, and we'll come to that.
Yeah.
You're now putting it out into the public domain, per se. Is there an element of nerves there, or is there an element?
Exciting.
It's exciting.
It's definitely excitement. It's funny, I don't really get nervous on a grand scale, because I just kind of think, look, if you sign off on it and you've done the absolute best you can and you're happy with it, and this is something that I've kind of had to learn again from my producer. Like, this is a conversation we had back in January. I was saying we were choosing a first single, and I was trying to people please a little bit, and he said, look, please us, please the three of us in this room, and walk out of there happy with it, and whatever will be, because you can't predict what people are going to like, what they're not going to like, what's going to be trending in 3 weeks' time, 3 days' time even. You just don't know anymore. Everything's moving so quickly. And I just think, like, I've had times before where I haven't been 100% happy with my music or the product actually leaving the studio in previous times. And that's when you get nervous, because you think, if I'm not happy with it, then I can't even stand over it and say, well, it doesn't matter about anybody else. Whereas this year, I am happy with the way things have gone. And so really anything else is kind of a bonus, because I did do it for myself at the end of the day this year. It was to kind of, as I said, feed that creative outlet again that I hadn't had for so long.
And get you back into that whole system, the whole area, the whole... And then song written, song recorded, put out there, and now you're out here, for the want of a better way, marketing it, promoting it.
Yeah.
How do you enjoy this part
Some
of it?
Some people hate this part. I actually love this part. I think what's more fun than, and I suppose as well, because if it's interviews with people who are interested in music and interested in the business, and I think maybe because I'm self-managed, and because now I've gone through this kind of nearly 12-month journey now of learning how to assemble the whole project and get it out there and get it heard, and I've never done that before, so it's fun to share it.
Okay, so that's what you're doing now, getting it out there, meeting. And you're pretty sharp around social media. I hear them talking here in the studio. It's like you're good. Like you're really
it was
good
my job, so, I suppose, do you know what? I've used these tools for other people for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm just using them for myself now. I never knew this was the way it was going to be, that I was going to, almost have this small business in a sense that's not lucrative, but you just never know where it's going to go. And as well as that, to be able to not have to hire somebody for, on a retainer or for $3,000 per campaign to have to do it for you.
Yeah.
Even that's a bonus. So I might not be making much for it, but I'm not spending much on it either.
Yeah. Can I ask, what were you doing before you came to the music, back to the music? And what was your profession?
I was writing feature writing. I was working for websites. I was everything you can imagine on kind of entertainment websites I was doing.
Okay, so you have the skills, you have the knowledge.
It was the same kind of industry, just a different part of it. But I had lost all my contacts because music industry changes so quickly, and radio, as you know yourselves, changes so quickly. People are constantly moving from station to station and publication to publication. You go back to your kind of spreadsheet that you had 5 years ago, and no one's there. So it's kind of,
where are they gone? Like, have they moved on?
They just move on. They move. Yeah, it's crazy how the speed at which people move in that industry. But for me, it was about basically clean slate completely this year. I literally January 1st deleted all my social media, deleted absolutely everything, trace of myself that I could find, and started from zero. And
why would you do that?
I just felt this was a whole new project, and I didn't want to. Because I suppose I had been out there in different ways, and I'm not kind of not acknowledging the previous music I put out. That's all up there on my website and everything. It's more a case of, it was a rebrand in some ways, and I felt I'm not going to rely on anything I've done before. I want this new music to speak for itself, and I'm going to really, like, the one thing, my kind of motto at the beginning of the year was, I'm going to do something every day to make it better than the day before as regards promotion. And that's the way it's been. There's been something nearly every day, whether it's a review or whether it's me going and doing an interview or coming up with new free ways of doing promotion online or offline.
Okay, and that's so beautiful, isn't it? So that's what we're all told to do, try and be better than the person we were the day before.
Yeah, it's cliche, but it's like, I just think it's the only way forward, because if you're doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, again, another cliche, it's all true.
Well, sometimes cliches are true.
Yeah, they're cliche for a reason.
Yeah, that's it.
There's a history behind it, isn't there?
Yeah.
So it's been an absolute pleasure, Robert, really and truly, and we genuinely here at Phoenix FM wish you every success.
Thanks a million.
Yeah. Robert, will you tell us and tell the listeners where they can go to get more information about you? And
they can go to iamroberto'connor.com, and all the social media is there. It's under the same kind of name, or Spotify or Apple Music, any of those kind of places. Robert O'Connor. The single's called River.
Give the details once again.
iamroberto'connor.com, or the same on social media. I am Robert O'Connor. iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere you can think of, it's out there.
We'll do that.